Hello and welcome back to the Limitless Performer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about well-being in the performing arts, because being your best on stage starts with looking after yourself off stage. So this week's topic actually came from a little moment that I had recently. So context, back in March I moved cities, which meant starting fresh in a lot of ways, including finding a new social circle. And I've been really lucky to meet some amazing people here, genuinely kind, creative, supportive friends who've really made Brighton home. But if I'm honest, I've been struggling to actually see them outside of convenience. You know, when you start counting time at work or in passing as social time. I've definitely fallen into that. And now that it's getting colder and darker, the motivation to leave the flat after a long day feels even harder to find. Between work, projects, and just trying to stay on top of everything, I suddenly realised that weeks had gone by without properly catching up with anyone. And it hit me how easy it is for friendships to quietly slip down the list, even when you know how important they are. And that got me thinking about the role community plays in the performing arts industry, not just socially, but mentally and creatively. We're always talking about auditions, training, technique, but rarely about who we're surrounded by and how those people influence our growth. Because your community really shapes you. Whether that's the friends that you trained with, the people you meet on your contracts, or the ones cheering you on from afar. And in performing, where life can feel transient and uncertain, the relationships that ground you really matter. Also, I know that maintaining them isn't easy. Maybe you've got friends scattered all over the country, or someone's on tour or on a cruise ship, or you feel like social media gives you the illusion that you've caught up. You've seen their photos, so you think you're in the loop, right? But you're not really connecting. So today, we're going to unpack all of that. Long-distance friendships, the temporary nature of performing contracts, and the pressure to always be civil because reputation matters, and how to find real, genuine connections in a world that can sometimes feel very surface level. And most importantly, we'll talk about how to build a circle that actually pushes you, people who celebrate your wins, challenge your limits, and remind you who you are when things feel uncertain. Something I've always found fascinating about this industry is how quickly friendships form. You can meet someone on the first day of rehearsals, and by the end of the week, it feels like you've known them for years. You're together all day, rehearsing, laughing, grabbing coffee, venting over the same stresses, running on adrenaline and caffeine, and those shared experiences bond you so deeply, so fast. And honestly, in my opinion, that's one of the best things about being a performer, that sense of instant connection. But when a contract ends, that world you've been living in, those routines, those inside jokes, they all end too. And you might promise to stay in touch, and sometimes you really do, but other times the friendships quietly fade. Not because anything went wrong, but because your lives move in completely different directions. You're off to a new project, a new city, a new cast, and suddenly that person who felt like family for 8 weeks can become someone you just occasionally see on your feed. And that is the bittersweet truth about performer friendships. They're built in these short, high-intensity bursts. It's connection on fast forward. But that intensity can make them fragile too, because when the show stops, so does the structure that held them together. Then after drama school, or the contract, everyone scatters. Some people go on tour, others move abroad or take contracts on cruises, and before you know it, you're living completely different lives in completely different time zones. You still care, of course, but staying connected takes a real effort. And social media doesn't always help, does it? You'll see a post. Oh, they're in Spain for a week, they look happy. You might even leave a comment, a few flame emojis, and your brain goes, okay, they're busy. I know what they're up to, I don't need to check in. But it's actually the opposite of connection. You've seen a highlight reel, not had a catch-up. So real friendship takes intention. It's those quick messages, the random voice notes, the How are you really doing? Texts that keep roots strong even when life gets chaotic. I think it's also important to talk about the difference between friendship and castmate energy, because we're taught from day one, get along with everyone, be civil, don't rock the boat, your reputation matters. And yes, professionalism is so important, but being universally liked isn't the same as being genuinely supported. But ultimately, castmates are co-workers, not automatically your friends. You can adore the people you work with, but that doesn't mean that they're the ones who will check in on you when the curtain comes down. Friendship, the real kind, goes deeper than the stage. It's not just who laughs with you in the green room, it's who listens when you're doubting yourself, who challenges you, encourages you, and reminds you of who you are outside of your job. So maybe take a moment to think about that. Who in your circle actually sees you, not just the performer version of you? Who can call you out, lift you up, and love you when you're not in a show? Because those are the people who keep you grounded, and they're really worth holding on to. Something I've noticed, and maybe you have too, is how social media can really complicate our friendships and our sense of community. You open Instagram, and within 5 minutes, you've seen someone from your year land a West End role, another person travelling the world on a cruise, and someone else doing a dreamy brand shoot. And instantly, your brain goes, okay, they're doing great, they're busy, they're happy, I'm really happy for them. And on one hand, that's amazing. We genuinely want to see our friends succeed. But on the other, it can create a really sneaky distance. You start to feel like you've already caught up with them, like you've already checked in, when really you've just seen their post on Instagram. And the danger of that is twofold. You disconnect from your friends and from yourself. You stop reaching out because you assume everyone's fine. And you stop sharing honestly because you feel embarrassed that you might not be fine. There was an article on Dazed recently called "Is Inconvenience the Cost of Community?" And that talked about this really beautifully, how connection takes effort. It's easy to like a photo or reply to a story, but it's not the same as real friendship. The article talked about how we've become so focused on convenience that we've forgotten that community often requires inconvenience. It's the extra effort, the message, the call, the showing up. That's what keeps people close. And it really resonated with me, because as performers, our lives aren't exactly convenient. Our schedules are unpredictable, we move around constantly, we're tired. But that's also why those small intentional moments of connection matter even more. So, here is a mindset shift that really helped me. Use social media as a bridge, not a scoreboard. When you see a friend post something amazing, instead of commenting, message them privately, celebrate them properly. And when you see someone who's quiet online, check in, ask how they're doing, not what they're doing. Maybe even set yourself a little weekly check-in ritual. Once a week, scroll with intention, not comparison, and send a voice note to someone instead of, or as well as, liking their post. Because those small moments build real connection. They remind people that they're seen and valued all of the time, not just when they're posting something shiny. And I think that's where real growth happens, in the unseen moments, the ones no one posts about. The quiet coffee catch-ups, the long voice notes, the genuine "how are you" texts. Those are the things that make us feel grounded and supported. They're worth so much more than any number of likes. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to friendships in this industry is how temporary everything can feel. Our world moves in cycles, contracts, tours, pantos, cruises, short runs. You step into a brand new group of people, and within a few days you're working long hours, laughing in the rehearsal room, maybe even crying from exhaustion together. You bond quickly because that's the nature of the job. The connection is intense, almost like a summer camp for adults. But then it ends. The show closes, the contract wraps, the ship docks, and everyone scatters. And as much as we all say, let's stay in touch, it's hard, because within weeks you're on to the next thing, maybe even a new project with a new cast and a new dynamic, and before you know it, that old friendship has quietly faded into another memory. As performers, our social landscape is constantly shifting, and when your world changes that often, you might think, I'll reach out when I'm not as busy, but then something else comes up, and then the cycle repeats. And then there's the civil expectation. We all know how small this industry is. Word travels and reputations matter. So we learn early on to get on with everyone, to be friendly, professional, easy to work with, and that's important, but it can also mean we hold back. We don't always show the messy parts or voice how we're really feeling because we don't want to seem difficult or ungrateful or for word to get around that we're not doing well mentally. And when every friendship has that layer of politeness, it can make connection feel shallow, like we're surrounded by people, but not always known by them. And that's why this conversation matters so much for growth and mindset, because real growth doesn't happen in surface-level friendships. It happens in the relationships where you can be honest, challenged, encouraged, where someone calls you out kindly when you're shrinking yourself, or reminds you your worth when the rejection emails pile up. Those are the people who push you, not out of competition, but out of care. So how do we build more of those relationships in an ever-changing environment? Here are a small, powerful things you can do. Check in beyond your current circle. Choose one person, maybe someone from drama school, a past contract, or a friend from home, and send a genuine "how are you?" Not about work, but about them. 2, you can set an intention with every new contract. When you start a new job, decide you'll make one real connection. Have a coffee outside of rehearsals, go for a walk, exchange contact details before the final show. It doesn't have to be everyone, just one person you really click with. And 3, redefine what friendship looks like. Some friendships are short and intense. They serve you in that moment and they fade naturally. Others are steady, quiet, long-term anchors. Both are valuable. They don't have to compete with each other. Because ultimately, the goal isn't to collect hundreds of industry friends. It's to build a small network of people, near or far, who truly see you and remind you of who you are and help you to keep growing, even when the spotlight moves elsewhere. When I talk about surrounding yourself with the people who push you, I don't mean the ones constantly asking what you're in for audition-wise or what you've been in since they last saw you. I mean the people who hold you accountable for when you're drifting, who remind you of your worth when you're quiet, and who encourage you to see yourself as more than just the performer. Real friends catching up with you won't feel tense or awkward. It's the kind of support that says, I believe in you and I'm not going to let you forget what you're capable of. The best communities are made up of people who challenge you and cheer for you in equal measure. They don't just clap for your successes, they also ask the hard questions. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you saying yes to the things that align with who you are? And are you resting? These are the people who see the full version of you. The artist, yes, but also the human. So what does it actually look like? It's friends who encourage you, but also challenge you gently when you start playing small. People who are not just in your show, but in your life, the ones who check in when you're not performing, who celebrate your non-industry wins too. Friends who remind you when you're slipping into that just performing mindset, when your worth starts to sound like it's tied to your next job or audition result. And I think one of the hardest things to accept is that friendships in this industry will always shift shape. People go on tour, contracts end, someone relocates. Your map keeps changing, but that doesn't mean that your roots can't stay strong. Long distance doesn't have to mean distant. Voice notes, shared playlists, little check-in rituals. Those are tiny ways to stay connected, even when your schedules don't align. It doesn't need to be constant for it to be meaningful. You'll have friends who come with certain seasons, that intense castmate connection that burns bright for a few months, and you'll have your anchors, the ones who've known you through all of it, who don't need the stage to understand you. Both are important and both have a place. And maybe the biggest mindset shift is this. Building your community isn't about having more people, it's about having the right people for this season of your life. Because growth doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in conversations, in support, in being seen and challenged by people who genuinely want the best for you, not just for your career, but for your well-being, your confidence, your sense of self. Those are your people, and that is your tribe. So let's talk about finding your people, the ones who lift you up, ground you, and remind you of who you are outside of your next audition. Because in this career, your circle really matters. It shapes your mindset, your motivation, even how you see yourself. And honestly, finding your people isn't about luck, it's about intention. Start by looking for alignment, not just convenience. Ask yourself, who do I feel calmer around? Who genuinely listens, not just waits to speak? Who makes me feel inspired, not insecure? Your tribe doesn't have to be huge. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 people who understand what you're striving for, but don't let you attach your worth to it. If you're struggling to meet those people, start by showing up where conversations are deeper than, what are you working on right now? That might be a class, a coffee morning, a well-being workshop, or even just online communities built around mindset, growth, or creativity. And remember, your tribe might look different from what you expect. It's not always the loudest people in the rehearsal room, it's often the quiet ones who see you clearly, encourage you gently, and challenge you kindly. Something I've learned over the past year is just how grounding non-industry friendships can be. When I moved to Brighton, I met people who didn't care how many self-tapes I'd done that week. They didn't think I was subpar because I hadn't booked the West End yet. They'd laugh in disbelief when I told them about some of the things we had to do in drama training, the emotionally intense exercises, the bizarre warm-ups, the trust falls that sometimes went wrong. And it was so refreshing. They helped me see performing from a completely new perspective, not as the only thing that defined me, but as just something I do, not everything that I am. I remember telling them about getting up at 4 a.m. to queue for an open call, standing outside in the middle of winter, hoping to be seen for 2 minutes, and they were like, that's not normal. And honestly, that moment made me pause. It made me realize how much I'd normalized exhaustion, rejection, and sacrifice as the only valid way to earn success. Now, that's not to say that those experiences are all bad. If open calls light you up, then do them. But for me, having people outside the industry really helped me reframe what self-respect looks like. They reminded me that my time, energy, and well-being also matter. So once you've found those people, whether they're performers, creatives, or completely outside of the arts, nurture those connections, because community doesn't just happen, it grows through care and consistency. So here are a few ideas. 1. Be proactive. Don't wait until you have time. Send that message, voice note, or meme that says, I'm thinking of you. Those small moments really help keep your friendships alive. 2. Prioritize quality over quantity. You don't need to see your friends every week. You just need to make the time that you do spend together feel real. Talk about life, not just work. 3. Create shared rituals. A monthly dinner, a group chat that's not about performing, or even a no audition talk walk. Something that helps you reconnect as people, not just as professionals. 4. Be honest. Let your friends know when you're struggling and ask how they are too. Authenticity builds trust. And 5, accept friendship seasons. Some friends will come and go with contracts, others will stick long term. That's okay, appreciate each for what they bring. Because ultimately, finding your tribe isn't about collecting more and more people, it's about finding the right people. The ones who cheer for you, yes, but who also remind you that you're more than just your CV. The ones who help you laugh, rest, and remember there's a whole world beyond the stage. They're the people who will keep you grounded when everything feels uncertain. And that, more than anything, will help you build a sustainable, limitless performing life. Alright, now we're going to move into real practical work. If you've listened this far, you're ready to do something with all of this. I'm going to give you 2 exercises that you can use this week to audit your community, clarify your support network, and start nurturing connections that'll really serve you. So firstly, we're going to start with a community audit. This is a check-in on your relationships. So take out a notebook, your phone's notes app, whatever you use, and this week pick 3 people that you've connected with in the last 3 months. They could be from training, a contract, a class, your personal life. For each person, ask yourself 2 questions. Firstly, how do they make me feel? Do you feel seen, supported, challenged, excited, safe, or maybe drained, judged, disconnected? Your second question is, what do they push me towards? Do they encourage you to rest, to grow, to be more you? Or do they mostly talk about jobs, auditions, highlight reels? And then flip it. Am I showing up for them? Are you the kind of friend who counts checking in as only commenting on their Instagram when they've got a cast announcement? Are you present? Relationships go both ways. This audit helps you spot gaps, relationships that aren't lifting you, ones you've let fade, or ones you can invest in more intentionally. The second exercise is your relationship circles. This exercise is based on relationship mapping techniques to analyze your social circle. So here's how to do it. Firstly, on a sheet of paper, draw a small circle in the center and write me. Then draw a slightly larger circle around it. This is your close circle. Write in the names of those you consider your closest relationships. For me, it might be my parents, my partner, my best friend. And then what you're going to do is draw another larger circle around that. That's your support circle. These are friends you trust, reach out to when things are hard, but you might not talk to daily. And then you've got the final outer circle. This is your wider network, acquaintances, colleagues, people you call on less often, or in those seasonal relationships like shows, projects, or classes. Once you've filled it in, ask, are there names in my close circle who leave me feeling less than? Are there people who deserve to move into my support circle, or even closer? Or are there people in the wider network who I could bring closer or invite a deeper connection with? Are there names in my close circle that drain me rather than lift me? This map gives you a visual of your relationships, because not all close relationships are positive or helpful. Some may need some boundary adjustments. So, once you've done the audit and mapped your circles, pick one action this week to deepen connection and one boundary you'll set if needed. So, an action could be sending a voice note to someone you've neglected, inviting a friend out for coffee that isn't about performance talk, or setting a regular catch-up ritual. A boundary could be limiting the time spent comparing yourself to highlight reels, unsubscribing from groups that drain you, or telling yourself you're allowed to rest instead of hustling for the next cast. This matters because your performance career doesn't just rely on your technique, your rehearsal rooms, or your auditions. It relies on your people. Your people influence your mindset. I'm sure we've all heard the phrase that you are a combination of the 5 closest people to you. It influences your self-worth, your resilience. And when you're intentional about your relationships, you're building not only a career, but a life that sustains you. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to just leave you with this. Your community shapes so much more than your career. It shapes your mindset, your confidence, and how you see yourself. Because it's not only about what you're doing, it's about who you're doing it alongside. You could be the most talented performer in the room, but if you're surrounded by people who drain your energy or make you question your worth, it's hard to grow. But when you find the people who lift you up, challenge you kindly, and remind you that you're enough even when you're not booked and busy, that's when everything starts to change. So this week, take a moment to check in with your circle. Who are the people that really see you? Who pushes you to be your best, not through pressure, but through belief? And who might you need to reach out to? The friend on tour or the one you haven't spoken to in a while? Those little messages, those voice notes, those moments of, hey, I miss you, they're what keep your world grounded. Next week, we're shifting gears a little. The episode is called, Are You Where You Thought You'd Be? It's a reflective mid-season check-in to explore how we measure progress. Because as performers, it's so easy to compare where we are now to where we thought we'd be. And that comparison can either fuel your growth or completely drain your joy. So we'll be unpacking how to reflect with kindness, how to reframe falling behind, and how to find peace in your current season. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world to me if you could follow the podcast and leave a 5-star rating, or like the video if you're listening on YouTube. It really helps more performers find these conversations. And if you want to keep up with daily reflections and behind-the-scenes chats, come hang out with me over on Instagram and TikTok at Limitless Performing. Until next time, surround yourself with people who push you, lift you, and remind you that you're so much more than your next role. You're a whole human, and that is what makes you limitless.